Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to old friends, global stars and some of my favourite people. And we've got one for you today. John Owen Jones has one of those voices where you just go, wow. As is demonstrated in his brand new album, Spotlight, that I listened to in full from beginning to end yesterday. It's quite lovely. And it begins incredibly low, doesn't it, John? How are you?
Very good, thank you. Yes, you're right. The album does begin very low, but I thought, I'm kind of known for singing long, high notes, and that's kind of my unique selling point, I suppose. So I thought it'd be nice to start the album off to ease the listener into what would eventually be lots of high singing.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the song from The Greatest Showman ends up in the rafters, but I mean, it starts incredibly low, and it's that Hugh Jackman number that everybody loves. I guess you've got to kind of keep up with what people are into, and there's been no bigger show in the last 2 years than The Greatest Showman, has there?
No, indeed. It's I must be honest, I didn't really enjoy the film that much, but the score is faultless. It's one of the best pop musical scores I think ever written. And, they're just really fun songs to sing. I've sung a lot of them live. But the one that I thought that would suit my voice most would be that end song from the film, from now on. But yeah, it's Pasek and Paul, who wrote the music for that, also written Dear Evan Hansen, a show that's coming into the West End soon. It's a huge hit on Broadway, and they wrote La La Land. So they're very much the writers of the moment. Of course, when I'm recording a new album, I have to try and include the old and the new.
Yeah, and what a wonderful album it is. You have that thing, and I've said it to you before. I think I was at opening night for Phantom in Leeds with you. I saw you on Broadway, obviously in the West End many times, in Les Mis and Phantom. And you have that thing where just when you're about to grab the seat because you wonder, are you going to get to that note, you make it look easy. And that's such a gift, especially 8 times a week. That's the trick, isn't it? Because anybody can do it once on a record, but to knock it out live, and you do it so well, John. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. I think a lot of it is to do with muscle memory. When you do a big show like that, you rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and eventually you get what we call show fit, and your stamina is built to a certain level. And often it's very hard to do that kind of thing in the studio because it's a new song that you might never have sung before. You haven't sung it into your muscle memory. So it's often harder to do it in the studio, funnily enough. But one of the things I always wanted to achieve as a singer in musical theatre was for you to hear me sing and forget that you're listening to a singer, that I'm just telling the story, and it's almost like I'm speaking. And so to have any kind of worry as an audience member that I'm not going to hit the notes will take you out of the story, and that is so important to me. So that's what I try and do,
It's going to be a really exciting time this summer because you're coming back into the West End at the Gielgud Theatre for Les Miserables, the concert, starring Alfie Boe, Michael Ball and Carrie Hope Fletcher, and also Matt Lucas as well. You'll be doing 3 shows a week at least. I suspect a few more too. This is wonderful, isn't it?
I'm doing 3 a week and he's doing 5. So, because it is a tough sing, Valjean. And, but yes, it is very exciting to be part of Les Mis again. It's been a family of, it's been a very important part of my life for many, many years, and I always feel like I'm coming home when I go back into the show. And Les Mis, of course, and Phantom have been so incredibly successful, and I think they continue to be so successful because currently, with the uncertainty surrounding all sorts of things in life, like Brexit and all that kind of thing, people aren't willing to take a risk financially on seeing something that's new or maybe hasn't been reviewed so well. So they go back again and again to shows they know and love, hence the continued success of Les Mis and Phantom, I think. I might be wrong, but that's how I see it. But it is, yes, a very exciting time. I don't quite know how Cameron Mackintosh does it. He seems to keep people excited about these shows that have been going for so long. But it should be an enormous amount of fun. 16 weeks at the Gielgud Theatre, Les Miserables. It's going to be an amazing experience for, I think, both the cast and the audience.
And you do it so well. Just give us the days you'll definitely do it. I'm sure there'll be others that you're doing too. But if we want to see John Owen Jones do Jean Valjean, what are the dates you're doing?
Well, I'll be doing Monday night, Wednesday afternoon and Thursday evening. But up-to-date schedules are all on my website, johnowenjones.com. I'm sure I'll be doing some other ones when Alfie is either working elsewhere or taking some holiday or something. I don't know. So, but it's all kind of being scheduled at the moment. But those are the ones I'm definitely doing.
I ask all big stars like you, why you? Have you put your finger on why they chose you to do the concert and not anyone else?
I don't know. I just it's always nice to be asked. It's always a surprise to be asked. Really, I wasn't expecting to be going back into Les Mis ever. Every time I leave the show, I think that's it. I'm done with it, and I'll move on. But I keep getting asked back. And I think maybe it's something to do with the fact that the role itself is such a challenge and such a niche casting bracket. It's very hard to find people who can do everything the role requires. And I kind of naturally got it in me, and I'm also, I think, quite reliable. So I guess just from a purely pragmatic point of view, they think, oh, let's call John, he can do it. And so then there I go. And then, thank you very much, that's another month of the mortgage paid, you know.
Yeah, I just saw it a few weeks ago with Dean Chisnell, who's currently doing the run in the West End. And again, still magnificent. He's incredible in the role. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, you need to be a tour de force to get through it. It starts off at 100 miles an hour. You get a bit of a break. And then, of course, there's that moment in the second half, bring him home. It must still be magical. There's nothing like it in musical theatre, is there?
No, not at all. I don't think so. It's also a very interesting moment in the storytelling of the show, because that song is the emotional fulcrum. It's where you've been building up to this huge release of emotion, and then you get this very personal, intimate moment, and then this spectacle immediately after, and then it goes down towards the end of the show. So I think it's one of those songs that it's not just a great song, but it's where it's actually placed in the show. It's one of those little magical confluence of all sorts of moments coming together in a great moment of theatre.
Do they give massage to the fellas on the barricade who can't move through that whole thing? Because they're there quite a while not moving, aren't they?
Yes. No, they don't give massage. They don't. But I've done that myself, and it is pretty tough just lying there. Certainly, you learn a position that's comfortable, but sometimes something might go wrong, and you might have like something sticking in your lower back once you're pretending to be dead for 5 minutes, and it's absolutely excruciating.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So you quickly learn if you go and see a cast at the very beginning of the run, their positions on the barricade when they die are completely different to what they are at the end of the run, because they've learned the most comfortable positions to get them through it.
That's what 8 shows a week will do for you. Curiously, in your new album Spotlight, you've done I Dreamed a Dream, which of course is not a John Valjean song, is it?
No, it's not. But I you know what? It's one of those things, isn't it, that I've known for Phantom and I'm known for Les Mis, and I've done the major songs for the males, apart from the Javert number, Stars, from both those shows. So I had to kind of reach out and look around and see what else I could do. And my musical director, John Quirk, who I've worked with for many years, he suggested, why don't we do I Dreamed a Dream and look at it from the aspect as if the story is being told by Jean Valjean and not Fantine. And then I thought, that's a great idea. So that's how we looked at it. And then we put all sorts of little musical motifs that are associated with Valjean in the arrangement. So I'm very pleased with how that came out, actually. It was one of those ones I wasn't entirely sure about. And also, right next to that on the album is the track Love Never Dies, a woman's song from the sequel to Phantom of the Opera, which was a unique challenge because of the range it needed, you know. So it was very interesting for me to expand, you know, where I go, but without going too far away from what people want to hear, you know.
That show seems to be the only one that Lord Webber was not sort of happy with the success of, and still has a little bee in his bonnet about. Do you think it could come back, and would you like to do it?
I don't know is the answer to both those questions. I recently worked with Andrew on something called Unmasked, which is a concert version of his show. They're developing people do his musical songs in shows, concerts all over the world, and he's decided to take ownership of that. So he can have the official Andrew Lloyd Webber concert called Unmasked, and we built a whole show around his music, and it's incredible how wonderful his melodies are. And I got to sing Till I Hear You Sing from Love Never Dies in that concert. And I did discuss with Andrew, you know, the fact that how he felt about it, and he still feels that the score is one of his best, and that there's a life for it somewhere, but it's just a very, very difficult thing to work out how to make it work. And it's interesting that, you know, even the most successful musical theatre composer of all time still doesn't know exactly what he's doing. Sometimes it's just hitting a bit of luck and getting there. Other times it's working and thinking you know what you're doing, and then it still doesn't make a success. And it's a mercurial thing, and it's interesting that someone who's as successful as him still doesn't know what that magic formula is. And
you never know what the public are going to like or not like, and that's sort of exciting in a way, isn't it?
It is. It's the zeitgeist. Sometimes capturing that is all you need, you know. And interestingly, audiences, I think, were really ready for a big fantasy musical like The Greatest Showman, and you know, and they took it to heart, and it's now enormously successful. And yet, Hugh Jackman touted that score and script around Hollywood for 7 or 8 years before someone took the punt and and paid to make it a reality. So people don't know. It's just like that guy who said, "Oh, I'm not going to sign the Beatles to my record company."
Yes.
People just don't know, do they?
No, there's a million cases of that. I love it. I guess as well, these movies do great for your business because it makes the whole genre sexy and relevant in 2019, and it hasn't always necessarily been that when there's sort of old musicals being rehashed and brought out and not done particularly well. But then you get a hit like this. I guess it gets people talking about musicals and it opens the Brits. Everybody wins, really.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's one of those things as well. It's not really seen as a cool thing to be part of or be interested in. But everybody knows a song from Phantom. Everyone knows a song from West Side Story, whether they want to or not. Football fans. They're the kind of guys. I mean, actually, it's interesting. People, I know some friends of mine who play for the Welsh rugby team, and they're enormous fans of musical theatre, and they're these big, massive, scary, brawny guys. And yet they love a good cry and a good emotional story, and you can't get anything that's more emotionally connected to you than something that happens through music. And that's, I think, why musicals are still so successful. And for me, they're my favourite art form,
Talking of which, I was talking to my friend earlier, he's a big, big fan of rugby, and he said, "Oh, John, yeah, you got John on." Yeah, I saw him at the rugby. He sang the national anthem. He was brilliant. Are those moments more terrifying than doing 8 shows a week? Because you've literally got 4 minutes to shine, and you're either going to cock it up or make the whole place go mad, aren't you?
Oh, it's best not to think about that, to be honest. It was a long-held dream of mine to stand on the pitch at the Principality Stadium in Cardiff before any international, and yet I got to do the big one, Wales versus England. I sang Delilah. I joined a choir of 120 people to sing the national anthems. And my mother was there in the crowd, and she'd never been to a rugby game, an international rugby game ever. And her first one, as I was singing on the pitch, and when I get a chance to experience something like that, I try to forget about the nerves and think it's 5 minutes of my life. It'll be over with soon. Let's just enjoy it. Yeah. And the scariest thing about that day was actually I was flying down from Glasgow on the morning of the game, and my flight was delayed. And then I had to drive down the M4 to get to Cardiff, and I got there with 10 minutes to spare. So I nearly missed my chance. Yeah. But luckily I made it, and I had an amazing day, and of course the result was wonderful, one for Wales as well.
That's presumably filed in the drawer of preparation meeting opportunity. You couldn't pull that off with 10 minutes to spare if you were a novice. You've got to have years under your belt to pull that off, because you'd just completely lose your brain, wouldn't you, at that point?
Yeah. It's funny, I'm standing in front of 75,000 people, not really worried about it at all, and I could see Bryn Terfel was in the audience, and he gave me a little wave, and I was like, oh, great. So it's 75,000 friends. We're all here for the same reason, and that kind of empowered me. But yes, you're right. All that experience and work that I've done over the years is, stepping into scary situations prepared me for that moment, and therefore I wasn't fazed.
I can't remember the first time we spoke, but it was at the time I was doing a radio station called Scarlet FM, living in a little place called Bury Port. And, of course, that's where you're from, and your dad had his shop. Is the shop still there? How's he doing?
Yeah, they're selling up, though. It's one of those things now, they've come to the end of the road with it. My mum and dad want to retire, and of course it's completely the wrong time to try and sell a business, what with the uncertainty around Brexit. So they're going to have to hold on for a little bit longer. But yeah, they are still there, and they're still trading. But they need to basically buy a little bungalow by the seaside now and put their feet up.
I don't blame them. They must be incredibly proud when they hear your album. I mean, we'll talk about Goodbye. It's track 11. And this was an unexpected choice as well, because it's not necessarily a big hit, but I love it. It's a great song.
Well, again, it comes back to that thing of trying to do stuff that people don't expect me to do, but yet staying within the framework of the arena that they expect me to perform from. So, choose an obscure song from a musical is something that I've done on every album, really, and it's usually something that I think deserves a bigger life, a greater audience. Not many people saw the show Catch Me If You Can, which is what the song Goodbye is from, which is based on the Spielberg and DiCaprio film from the 1990s. And I never saw it, but I've heard the soundtrack, and one of the things I do as part of my job is listen to soundtracks, and and that's why I chose From Now On as well, because it's one of those songs that it's not as famous as the other songs in the show, but it's equally as good. And so, but I really enjoyed singing it, and also it's going to be one of those songs I think is just going to be really fun live when I finally get the chance to do it.
John, it's always great to talk to you. You are one of show business's pros. You turn up and you deliver, and that's, I think, the key. If you can do that 8 times a week, I think you should have everybody's respect. It's the hardest job in the world in one way. That discipline is incredible, but you make it look so easy.
That's very kind of you, thank you. And I've got to tell you that Dame Judi Dench is an old friend of mine, and she was the one that kind of inspired me to have that professionalism, because I watched her, the way she behaved, and I thought, if there's anyone you need to emulate in this business, it's somebody as lovely and as talented as her. So thanks, Judy.
Congratulations on everything. The new album's called Spotlight. You can get it on Amazon and all the other places as well. And go to the website, John Owen Jones, into Google, and it'll be there. And I look forward to seeing you back in the West End with Les Miserables, the concert this summer. It's going to be lovely. Thank you so much for your time, John.